Well, we got Simon Pegg here on Our City tonight. We got a few minutes with him. You're all in Whistler right now, Simon, talking about your, I got to tell you, a powerful new film called Lost Transmissions. For our viewers out there, can you tell us a little bit about your character, Theo, who is a successful music producer, but suffers from schizophrenia?
Yeah, it's a film by Catherine O'Brien. She wrote and directed it, and it's based on a true story, or based on something that happened to her with a friend of hers. In the film, Theo is a music producer who sort of takes this young chanteuse under his wing, a woman who he sees has great potential as a singer, but she's kind of holding it in a little bit, and he decides to help her develop her talents. But at the same time, Theo, who's suffering from a medicated schizophrenia, so he's okay whilst he's on his medication, decides to come off his meds because he feels like it might be inhibiting him in some way. And so then descends into the, into the inevitable schizophrenic break. And Hannah, Juno Temple's character, sort of is there on hand to try and bring him through it. All his friends who've been with him for years are almost weary of it now because it's happened to him so many times. But she sort of sticks by him. So it's their kind of journey through the underbelly of LA where Theo's having this break.
Can you talk a bit about the research you did? Because there's so many just powerful little moments in this movie. And I mentioned to you yesterday on your red carpet about the moment that really struck me was when he was working in the studio.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, look what this guy's doing with our music. Oh my God, what is he doing with it? It's just in literally the blink of an eye.
Yes, yes.
Can you talk a bit of some of the things you learned in preparing for this character?
Absolutely. Well, there's that cliche about, creativity and madness are kind of sort of bedfellows in a way, and you look at some of the great artists, and a lot of them suffer from mental health issues of some kind. Van Gogh, whoever might have channeled something of their, whether it's bipolar or schizophrenia or depression, into their work. The cliche is that it helps, and in some respects it can, for a split second, create some kind of interesting outcome, but ultimately it can only be a hindrance. And I think with Theo and his schizophrenia, it gives him a super awareness of sound and things, and for a moment that might help him create an interesting sound, but all too soon it's gone into the realms of utter chaos. And so Catherine really liked that idea of exploring whether or not that's a true thing or it's just a bit of a cliche, and I think it's probably the latter.
And also your character, I've never seen this before in film, where your character really knows how to, for lack of a better phrase, play the system. In that he's in there, Juno Temple's character has taken him in, and he can play the doctor.
Yes,
by saying, oh, it was hydration. And it's because it's a real commentary, this film is, on the state of mental health care in America, and we could say the same thing in our country. And it's interesting to see Theo go through that journey where he's in there, but they can get out very easily.
Yeah, because, delusional people are sometimes incredibly lucid and are able to manage their situation. And of course they're not going to submit themselves for being held in care, because they probably think they're going to be murdered in there because of the paranoia. So they'll quite easily just pretend that they're sane, which is where the problem lies, because if you have to submit yourself for care, a lot of people are never going to do that. And unless you are in a system which allows people to submit you for care, like in the UK, you can be sectioned, you can be, you can take someone to a hospital and say this person is a danger to themselves and others. They need to be looked after for a period of time. Whereas, other places, they ask you, are you a danger to yourself and others? No. Well, then you can go. And of course, they're not. Well.
This is a fantastic film. One of the great things I've enjoyed about your career over the years is there's just such a variety of performances you've given on the acting landscape. You're not just pigeonholed into one category. And personally, I think that's what's allowed your career to go along so long, is you take on challenges. Okay, we're going to lighten up a little bit. I got to tell you, two of the funniest movies I've seen in the last 15 years have your names on them, and that's Shaun of the Dead, and I really, really love World's End. One of the things that Brits do so well, I think, is they'll get a very funny, silly movie, but they'll stack it with really, really good actors. Like you look at the cast you have in World's End, talk about doing that movie, because I'll start with that one too. Shaun of the Dead I loved, but I loved what you did with that movie, because the cast is fantastic. A lot of dramatic actors in it.
We have the privilege of knowing people like Martin Freeman and Paddy Considine, Eddie Marsan,
Rosamund,
and also I'm not entirely wedded to the notion that comedies have to always have supposedly funny people in, or people that are believed to be funny, or what have you. Dramatic actors can often bring comedy great weight because they'll play it in such a way that it's very straight and not overdone. And
Right.
yeah, with The World's End, you know, it's a film about a suicidal alcoholic on a mission to basically end his own life, and that's quite a serious issue.
Yeah, I say it's a very funny movie, but there's
It
a
just
sympathetic
happens to
character
be
you
a
play.
comedy, you know.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that the film was full of people that could carry that weight and play the fun, but also play the seriousness of it, because it is underpinned by, you know, that's another film in which I played someone with a mental health issue. He's an addict, you know, and it was enormous fun. Those guys, all five of us together, when it was myself and Nick and Paddy and Martin and Eddie, we had such a laugh.
What do you think? It leads me into my next question. I've always been fascinated by this really true belief that great comedians make good actors, great actors. I mean, it goes back as far as Chaplin. You look at Jackie Gleason and Robin Williams. When I heard you were doing this movie, Lost Transmissions, I had no doubt, not blowing smoke your way, but I had no doubt that you would succeed in that. You're a very good actor, but you're also a damn good comedian. And I've always been fascinated by the connection between comedians and dramatic acting. And you just hit on it, perhaps.
I think, yeah. I also think to be a really good comedic actor, you have to have an awareness of every facet of the dramatic spectrum, so you can lampoon it in some way, so you can take it further. You know, whether you're making light of tragedy, crying, whatever emotion, you kind of have to have a handle on all of them on a base level in order to take them into the realms of absurdity. So that leaves you, before you start being funny, with hopefully an arsenal of dramatic capabilities, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, there are a lot of great comedy actors who can pull out dramatic performances. You know, Robin Williams is a classic example of that. Someone who was so just intensely funny, but could also be very restrained and put in beautifully measured, nuanced, dramatic performances. It doesn't always work the other way. You see some dramatic actors trying to do comedy, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, very true. I have to ask you were talking about your friends earlier. One of the guys I've grown to really love over the years is one of your dearest friends, and that's Nick Frost.
Yeah.
Is it true that you kind of brought him along way back in the beginning just because you wanted your pal with you?
Early on,
early on,
it was, you know, we just wanted to devise a way that we could hang out. And I was very, very taken with Nick's talent. You know, I was like, man, you're the funniest guy I know, and you're not even, I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
And the funniest guy I know isn't
a comedian. Yeah.
And I just sort of tried to gently encourage him to act, and wrote a part for him in Spaced, and you know, and that was it really. Once he got over the fact that he could do it, it took him a while. You know, he's always fun. I'm going to get caught, you know. Now he has his own career and his own. We just started a company together.
Oh, because he's watching at home. The most recent thing I've seen him in was a very funny movie called Fighting with My Family.
Yeah, that's a great film.
And again, he's fabulous in it. I won't keep you much longer. I just want to stick with comedy a little bit in your early career. I always like to ask people like yourself, what was an early influence? I know you mentioned a guy named Rick Mayhill, which I apologize, I had not heard of. And obviously deserves me looking into from what you discussed. When you're growing up, what are you seeing on the tube? What are you watching that's really catching your eye that where you're saying, gee, I'd like to do that?
Well, I guess when I was really young, my dad got me into Monty Python, and that kind of absurdist comedy was something I really loved. And then Rick Mayall and those guys that created the comic strip, who appeared in the early 80s, they revolutionized comedy in the UK. They kind of had the same seismic effect on the comedy landscape that punk had on music.
Yeah.
It just became something very homemade and makeshift and really anarchic, not for your mum and dad, extremely irreverent.
So it was yours.
Yeah, it was like they were talking to us, and then anything along those lines of the sort of alternative comedy, the less safe, the more kind of edgy, satirical, smart stuff always really appealed to me. So by the time I started to work in comedy, I was working with the sort of previous generation of those people, Chris Morris and Steve Coogan, who had come up with a kind of very naturalistic style of absurdist comedy. And so and each movement of that is kind of handed over to each other, like the Goons before Python. Spike Milligan was in the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Terry Jones was in the Young Ones. Ben Elton was worked with Vic and Bob, who were these two absurdist comics that I loved in the 90s. And then, you know, each time there's like a baton passing between each.
Yeah, and he put, I'm thinking Dudley Moore and was in the middle. Wasn't he? But it was like the Goons to somebody to the Pythons.
Yeah, you can track that legacy of.
Last question for you. What do you got coming up after this? You gonna continue? I mean, you're in a number of very popular franchises,
Yeah.
and I love that you are able to go from that to smaller independent films. It must be very fulfilling to be able to do
It
a
is.
wide variety. As I said, that's litters
Yeah.
your career, is that kind of variety of choices.
And it's not like one for me, one for them either, right? It's not like I do the big films
Yeah,
because I can do the small films. I love doing those big films. They're enormous fun. So yeah, I have another Mission Impossible to start next year, and I'm also producing stuff with Nick. We've started a company called Stolen Picture, and we've just completed our first series for Amazon.
Oh,
and,
great. Okay.
a couple of things that we've got in development that will hopefully go in the hiatus between the two next missions. So yeah, busy.
Well done. Well, enjoy your time here, and congratulations on this wonderful new film.
Thanks.
It's. I will say this, and I mean this as a compliment. It's a movie you really endure. I don't think you'd say this is something I enjoy.
No,
it's something you sit and you just look at this character. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank
It's
you, yeah.
Lost Transmissions. I'll look for it in this year.